Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. I think all of you woke up suddenly. Yeah, sorry for that. But nevertheless, I'm pretty sure with the interesting sessions being planned over the next 3 days, it would definitely take us through to new frontiers, enhance our knowledge and things like that. As you're all aware, this session is about Indian IT services, pitch for newer heights. And of course, the tagline goes, breaking barriers. That's what is required for today. Our moderator and the esteemed speakers are all set, but it's my pleasure at the outset to request the moderator for this session, Mr. Jayesh Chakravarti, to kindly come over to the CTO of MMR. Put your hands together, ladies and gentlemen, for Mr. Jayesh. So I would not stand between Mr. Jayesh and the esteemed panelists. I will straight away hand over the session to you. It's all yours for the next 1 hour.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the show. First of all, before anything else, I'll request the panel to join me here. Partha, George, Sudhir, and Sarvesh. Good afternoon and thank you for being here. The topic, which is Indian IT services industry pitch for greater heights, is in some way very relevant in the context of what has happened and what's going on here. But before I give you my opening comments very briefly, let me take a moment to introduce this panel of very enthusiastic and passionate set of people. I have with me to my left N. Partha Sarathi. It's hard to call him by that name because in the industry is known as Partha. Very brief introduction of Partha. Partha is the co-founder, vice chairman and chief operating officer of Mindtree Consulting, a startup many years ago, which today is brushing close to $1 billion in revenue, a success story. Being the chief operating officer, it's easy for me to say what he does not do or is not responsible for. But very quickly, he manages the people function, learning and development, investor relationship, compliance and risk management, infrastructure, real estate, and many more of that. Partha, I won't go through the full thing. Partha, of course, being the co-founder of Mindtree, has been with them all through. Prior to that, he spent 15 years in Wipro, and he's a graduate from Birla Institute of Technology in Pilani. And I was very pleasantly surprised to see he's also an alumni of the Harvard University now. Welcome, Partha. Please give him a big hand.
Thank you.
Again, gives me great pleasure to have Sarvesh Mahesh, CEO of Tavant Technology. As you know, many of you know, Tavant has been in existence for a while, and they offer digital products and platform solutions to customers all over the world. They have customers in North America, in Europe, in Asia Pacific. And Sarvesh, as their CEO, oversees their entire operation, the full supply chain of all that is done when you digitally deliver a product or a solution to a customer. They have about 2,500 employees. They are headquartered at Santa Clara. And Sarvesh's past is also very interesting. He has spent time with some leading companies, Amazon, Junglee, and also he was with the professional services organization of Sybase. He's a graduate from IIT Roorkee. Please give a big hand to Sarvesh and welcome you. Probably one person whose face matches that photograph, the youngest looking, is Sudhir Tiwari. Sudhir is the managing director for ThoughtWorks India Private Limited. He's the MD for India operations. And he has been with the company, for the organization, for the last 12 years. And as their MD, he is responsible for service excellence. He's responsible for talent management, client relationship, business strategy, and all of that. Sudhir's bio has one interesting aspect, that he's a hands-on person who started his career as a technical lead, then was an agile coach, was a project manager, a program manager, and therefore understands the nuance of the entire services and software development cycle. He is from NIT Trichy, earlier called REC Trichy, and has done his advanced management program from Indian Institute of Management, Bengaluru. Big hand to Sudhir. Last but certainly not the least, Gives me great pleasure to welcome George Jacob Matikal. George is the president of the APAC region for CGI. CGI, as you know, is an information systems and business consulting organization. Very well known, I think of Canadian origin, right? George has been with them for many years. Today, as the president of the APAC region, he oversees customer relationship, interfaces, client relations organization of CGI across. He's responsible for service delivery, he's responsible for talent, for the culture of the organization. And as an old hand at CGI, he has spent much time at CGI in different roles. Prior to this, he was senior vice president and business leader for CGI's communication and enterprise delivery system. And prior to that, he was associated with CGI Americas, where he largely worked for service delivery and client relationship with the telecom industry. He is a BS in computer science from the University of Houston and an MBA from Texas University. Did I get that right?
That's absolutely
great. With that not so brief introduction, let me give the opening comments for a minute or two, after which I will seek the views of the panel members here. For some of you with a little literary bent of mind, I'm reminded of the old classic where the opening line says, it was the best of times, it was the worst of times. It was time of wisdom, it was time of foolishness, it was the epoch of belief, it was the epoch of incredulity. This is Charles Dickens' Tale of Two Cities. In some sense, the industry is poised exactly to that description. If you look back at the services industry, some great achievements have been done. Today, we are almost a $160 billion industry. We are one of the largest contributors to the country's exports. We have a huge domestic market of almost $40 billion. We employ over 1 million people and we develop tremendous talent. And on the qualitative side, as important or even more, we got into the world economic map because of this industry. That's one thing on one side. On the other side, it is very clear today that what took us so far successfully is not enough to take us forward from here, because there are a number of changes which are happening today, huge amounts of change. Easy to understand are the technological change of cloud, data, analytics, artificial intelligence, robotic process automation, mobile and digital as a concept. But there are many, many other changes in terms of velocity of doing business, business models and so on. And therefore, there is an imperative need to change. And before I pass on to each of my panel members to give an opening remark on this, I was reminded of two narratives, two jokes which I heard. Partha used to tell me this many years ago. This is on one side of change, where his professor in BITS Pilani called him one day and very sagely advised him and said, learn the language Pascal, you will always have a job in your life. How many of you know Pascal is a language? Well, that's not so bad. But I suspect you might not have had a job, certainly not the one which you are doing now. That was one side of change. The other story I wanted to tell you, a brief interaction I had with a very young, enthusiastic couple, returning Indians. And the husband and wife were there at Frankfurt airport, and the wife was carrying, and she was about to deliver a child in the next 1 month. Both of them found out that I work for the IT industry, and we were having lunch together when she seriously asked me, do you think by the time my child grows up, it will be too late for computer science? And I told her, why don't you just enjoy the process of delivering the baby, bringing it up, and then you can worry about it later. I could make out that they were not very impressed by my answer. But that is the other side, the over-enthusiasm to change. With this as background, I'd like to go around the panel with the first question, which is common for all of them, saying, where do you think we are and where should we be going? A very standard, classic and somewhat cliched management question, but still relevant. Partha.
Thanks, Jayesh. Can you hear me? Thanks, Jayesh. First of all, it's a pleasure to be here. I don't think anybody is going to deny the fact that IT industry is facing a lot of change. But I personally believe change is not something that we should be worried about. If you look at the IT services industry that we all have built over so many years, it has gone through so many challenges in the past. And every time there's been a challenge, there has always been a a lot of doomsday predictions saying, you know, this is the end of the IT industry. And look at what has happened to the IT industry. Whether it is a Y2K challenge, or it is a challenge in 2008, or the challenge that happened after September 11th, I think after every single challenge, that industry has gone from strength to strength. But having said that, I personally believe the change that we are witnessing today is very different from what we have seen in the past. One is what Jayesh pointed out. It's not just only about technology. There are many, many aspects of this change that we should be very, very mindful of. It could be technology, it could be the way services get delivered, it could be the pace of customer expectations have dramatically gone through a lot of change. And I think that's something we have not faced in the past. So I think it is not one single change, and I personally am willing to take a bet that probably in the next 5 years, we will see more change than what we have seen in the last 2 decades. But having said that, I think we have some of the finest people working in the IT service industry, and who have the experience, who have the wisdom, and who have the ability to be able to charter a course for ourselves in spite of all this change. And I personally am very confident that we will move from strength to strength, and we will give some more examples as we go forward.
Thank you, Partha. Sarvesh?
Okay. Good afternoon, everybody. I have a sore throat, so please excuse me. The good thing about our industry is that the demand for software is at an all-time high, and the amount of software that is going to be required to run the world is just exploding. I give an example that I can buy a toothbrush today, which is Wi-Fi enabled and comes with an app. Now, is that a useful thing or not? We can debate that. But somebody wrote that software. The same thing, every company has become a software company. Nike, who used to make shoes, is a software company now. You go, you can configure your shoe, you can become part of their community. So the demand for software is very, very high. And the way software is being built and delivered is changing. And the good thing for us is that the change creates opportunity. Right? So we have to embrace the change and find new things that we can do that we couldn't do before. And it is going to, frankly, we have been in business for 17 years, but I think it will create a lot of opportunity for you guys to create your own companies. Because change creates opportunity. If nothing changes, it's very difficult to beat the incumbent. The incumbent has to falter. But now the incumbent doesn't have to falter. You can find your own opportunity. So this change is really a good thing. We should embrace it, find new opportunities, and take advantage of that.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Sudhir?
Is this audible? Yeah. So I think couldn't agree more. I think all of us agree that I think there's a huge change. And I guess for the Indian software industry in specific, it's really trying to understand what that change is and what the impact is going to be. I think you pointed out correctly, what got us here is definitely not going to take us to the next level. I think one thing which we had realized talking to a lot of our clients, I think a few years back, technology was something which was far away from the business. It was almost a support function. And I think a bunch of us who started before the Y2K movement came to India at that point of time, code documents were thrown over the wall, teams used to code something and send stuff back. That's not going to work in the future. And that's, I think, the big change we need to realize, that we need to get a lot closer to the businesses. I think as Sarvesh mentioned, technology is everywhere. Everyone is saying every company has to be a software firm or a technology firm. We call it tech at core. Every company needs to have technology at its core. It doesn't depend on what kind of domain it is. So two aspects I think very exciting, because there will be huge amount of opportunities, but this is going to lead to a lot of change. So where we'll end up, it'd be disappointing if the same 5 or top 10 firms still remain there. That means they've done something fantastic. But it also means, I think, people have just missed out some great opportunities to ride this wave of disruption and actually disrupting these firms. This is creative capitalism at its best. I think some firms will fade away and some will die, and the best will succeed. So that's the exciting part looking forward.
Thank you. John?
Yeah. Can you hear me? Okay, so I'll since my colleagues on the panel have addressed So I think my colleagues on the panel have addressed the type of change and what they see as us doing from change. I'll just address your question, Jayesh, from perspective of CGI as sort of the delivery engine for the rest of CGI, what we found, or what I see, is that even as our customers are going on their digital journey, our company needs our India operations more than ever. So if I look at our growth just in India in terms of revenues delivered over the last 2 years, we've grown 23% 2 years ago and 18% in the last 12 months. And that's really phenomenal. That's far in excess of the growth of the rest of this company. And so the reason for that is what you alluded to, Partha, is we have the people with the energy and the skills and the innovation to deliver that change. And in fact, our company recently recognized the importance of India and as a strategic asset by making us part of, elevating us to be its own independent strategic business unit on par with all of the customer delivery units throughout the globe. And you know, that's the position that I'm in right now, leading that organization. So I think as we see what our customers are doing, you know, at CGI, we recognize that India is actually the answer to help us to take our customers on that journey. And so we're really seeing good things in the future.
Sure. Thank you for that. And certainly one thing which comes out straight away is there is a lot of coverage in the press saying it's doomsday and so on. Certainly, I think the industry does not share that view at this point in time. Perhaps we could be optimistic, some of it could be less optimistic or more, but certainly there seems to be an opportunity more than a threat at this point. Partha, you dangle this thought of changes are not just cloud, mobile, etc. There are many changes in business and business model. Can you sort of elaborate on that and tell us what are all the changes?
Sure. I think, you know, technology probably is a little better understood in terms of the changes. You talked about a whole lot of jargons, and the IT industry is very famous for throwing jargons, right? We're very good at that. But even if you look within technology, one of the things I keep saying is, if you look at, let's say, 5 years back or 8 years back or 10 years back, who was your best employee? Your best employee was somebody who's, I have a computer science background, who can write a fantastic algorithm, who can write the most efficient code, probably get it right the first time. Those are the kind of people you are aspiring to have. I'm not sure whether these are the kind of people will be required tomorrow. I'm not saying they will be required, but what is more important is actually the best technology guy of future is going to be almost like an orchestrator. There are best of breed technologies available in multiple places. Who is the guy who can actually understand each one of these, put it all together, still meet the needs of the customer? So from an individual developer who's a great algorithm guy, now you need to become like an orchestrator. So it requires a little bit of different way of approaching the whole problem. So technology is obviously one key big change. The second obvious impact is on talent. I think my personal worry is actually the biggest area we are underestimating this change is actually on quality of talent. And we all know well enough, and all of us are struggling with that, is that actually what the university is producing today and what the industry needs, the gap is becoming wider and wider. And I think we are completely underestimating this challenge of talent. So that is the second part of it. The third part of it is actually, you know, you can't be a generic IT services company who is going to provide services to all kinds of customers in all areas all over the world. I think expertise has to be much sharper focused. And I think that is a very important aspect. That's a lesson that all of us have to figure out in terms of how do you project your expertise, saying it's very focused on a certain segment. I personally believe that, you know, the opportunity to provide all services to all customers all over the world, that train has already left the station. So the question is actually, can we convert ourselves from being a generic player to really an expertise player? And what is your expertise that you want to be in? That is the third angle. The fourth angle is actually, when you have an expertise, then your go-to-market strategy has to reflect your expertise. And in multiple angles, in terms of sales cycles, in terms of the kind of people that you have in the front end, the sales people, the account managers, they have to fundamentally go through change as well. Because if they are not able to reflect what you're good at and you project your expertise, then that's going to be a big challenge. That's a fourth. And the last but not the least is actually engineering models itself have to go through a change. We are used to certain software development methodologies. In the past, it's worked very well. But that has to reflect the new expectations of customers, which is much shorter life cycles, you know, fail fast models that all of us keep hearing about. All of that has to get reflected in the engineering models, and along with the engineering models, the business models also will go through a change. You know, the traditional way of saying, you know, I have 100 people, It's like an auto meter which keeps running, or a Uber meter which keeps running as long as people are there. I think those things are dead. So I think all 5 areas we'll have to look at it holistically and not just look at only from a technology point of view.
Thanks. Thank you, Partha. Sarvesh, just as a segue from what he said, you probably have 5 or even more. Often on the curve of change, in some we are ahead as an industry, in some we are behind, some we are on par for the course. Where do you think we've got a step ahead, and where are the places where you think we need to improve?
So I think we started late, meaning as an industry, as a company, in terms of identifying the change and making those changes. The areas where we are doing quite well is all the technology areas, because it's easy to teach, it's easy to learn. But the areas where we are behind, I would say, are the softer side, which is things like design, things like how you construct a team. You don't require a team of 70, 80, 90 people anymore. You know, I was at Amazon, and there we used to have a rule that no team should be bigger than, so like 2 pizzas should be able to feed your whole team. If you require more than 2 pizzas, then your team's too big. So you need multi-talented, multi-faceted people in a team and be able to deliver something very, very quickly. So that is a big thing that we need to have. The other thing is, I think it has been a weakness per se forever, but now it's become even more important to overcome that, and that is program management, and especially the conflict resolution part of the program management. So if there is something that is not right, how early can you go and tell the clients, or how early do you fix them? No, one of my favorite sayings used to be that the sooner you fall behind in a project, the more time you have to catch up. Right? And what it really means is the sooner you realize you've fallen behind. Because if you don't realize, then you don't do anything about it. So I think the softer side, things like design, how you organize the team, how you do program management, conflict management, how you work with the clients, those changes need to be brought about very fast. And I think companies like us have to no longer, or can no longer depend on universities for these skills. So we have to become our own universities, and be actually not be very happy or unhappy when somebody leaves. In a university, when somebody graduates, the professor is not feeling bad, right? Meaning, so the same thing for us. We should have to think that the 4 or 5 years that people are going to stay with us, our goal is to constantly make them learn and give them opportunity to so that they can learn. It's not that we can make them learn, right? But we have to encourage that, and we have to create a culture of that. Thanks.
So, well said, Sarvesh. I just had one observation. If we use Amazon's yardstick of 2 pizza, I would be an individual contributor. Sudhir, you know, I am reminded of that old statement which Mr. Narayan Murthy used to make when he was the chairman of Infosys, saying, our biggest assets come in the morning at 8:30 and leave in the evening at 5:30, meaning it's talent, talent and talent which really drives our industry. With changing times, with transformation required, what do you see the changes we need to do with regard to talent, with regard to competencies and so on?
I think Partha and Sarvesh mentioned already, I think that is going to be the biggest challenge, I think, as we move forward. And I'd like to break it into 3, I think, distinct parts. I think the first, and we discussed that a lot within ThoughtWorks, they have quote unquote the millennials are coming. They are joining the workforce. I envy them a lot because they don't know what they want, but everyone is bothered in terms of what they want.
Just one sec. Are you able to hear it? At the back? No. Why don't you?
Maybe pick up the mics. Is this better? Okay. No. So I think 3 things which I want to leave on the talent side. I think first, the millennials are coming. They will be joining the workforce. I think I envy them a lot because they're a generation on whom everyone else is bothered. And I don't think they're too bothered about themselves right now. And that may be, I think it's a good thing. I worked in 2 places in my career, and I think that's going to change moving forward. I think people's loyalty towards organizations is going to be seen very differently. So I agree with you. If someone stays for a year or 2 years, that's going to be good. It's going to be a lot about association. So, and people would want to be associated with a good brand. They would want to have the luxury of working for a period of time, going out and then coming back. So fundamentally, how our organizations are structured in the future, I think that's going to change. Millennials will not have any brand loyalty. They would expect the brands to be loyal to them. And I think that's going to be one big change. I think second key change, I think with all what we spoke about how businesses are going to change, I think the diversity of the workforce is going to be absolutely critical. It's no longer, again, as Partha mentioned, just having a programmer who's just churning out code, that's not going to be enough. And I think we did this sort of study in ThoughtWorks, I think a few months back, and we were just saying all the people within the company, the diverse background. So one of our MDs has a linguistic background. He's actually studied Greek and Latin, and then he went and studied software. So if we have economics, we have history, we have political science. And then if you look at historically, where has innovation happened? It's really happened at the fringes when two industries sort of come together. So I think if you take the ability of what people have in software and you mix it with another industry, I think that's going to happen. So from a talent point of view, if you're not aggressively hiring a diverse background, I think it's going to be a challenge. We actually run something called a STEP program where we're now hiring diploma students. So these are kids who have done diploma and they're actually coming in. It's a 2-year course and then they join ThoughtWorks, I think after that. And I think just the energy and the variety and the thought process which they're getting into the organization. So 10% of our workforce is with that background right now. We're 1,000 in India, and I think that's fantastic. Third is, of course, everyone has an existing workforce, which we shouldn't forget. And I think there's going to be a lot of, I think, retraining, reskilling. I almost use the word rehiring, where I think you almost have to rehire people in, because I think what the clients are asking, the way the projects are getting executed, I think all of that is fundamentally changing. So I would say these three things from a talent point of view are absolutely critical.
Thank you, Sudhir. Very interesting. And before I ask George a question, I just wanted to alert you, if you have any question the next round, let's get some questions from the audience. We'll be very happy to answer them. George, so we got a lot of perspective from the three of them. Speed, velocity, agility, moving from large projects, Sarvesh was talking, instead of 70 people, 4 people, minimum viable product, various concepts emerging. If you were to do a strategic planning for the future of this industry, what are the big risks which you would identify that we should all be aware of, and therefore, once you're aware, that's half the battle won?
Yeah, so, we've talked about a pretty major change, a change of great magnitude, and obviously there's a tremendous amount of risk there, and we can't address all of them. So I'll just, zone in on a couple of things. But I'll go back to a survey that we do at CGI every year as part of our strategic planning process. We go to our own customers. We talk to about 1,000 executives, business as well as IT executives. And in the survey we did in 2017, we asked them this very same question: what do you see as a top challenge that you face in becoming a digital enterprise? And what they identified was culture and talent, or enabling the digital employee. And when I thought about it, even though we're approaching it from a service provider mindset or a perspective, that's really what it's about. It's not, I think the biggest risks are not in technology. I think we know how to do technology, but it's about the people. It's about the culture. So I'll just hone in on a couple of things. One is, there's a big risk that we will get caught up in the technology and focus on the technology and forget the people aspect of it, the cultural change that is required, the fact that people need to think differently. We've got a lot of unlearning that we have to do, right? I mean, just to give you a very simple example, when we started our automation journey, we invested in some automation platforms, and we said, okay, the obvious thing, let's go test it out on our major application management contracts. So we're doing a lot of repetitive stuff, things that we do at the beginning of the day, making sure that applications are up and running. And we told our team, here's a platform, go automate it. So they did a really good job. They were very proud of it. Everything was automated. A month later, we still had the same 50 people on that team. So we said, well, why is it that you still need 50 people? So they had all kinds of reasons why they still needed the people. They didn't want to let them go. They were feeling bad to let them go. They needed security blankets, whatever might be the case. It's not about the technology. That's easy to do. It's about getting people to think differently. Otherwise, we're not going to achieve the goals of this transformation, the goals of better quality, of more efficiency, of lower cost, and getting away from the FTE-based model to value-driven, outcome-based model. So that's number one. The second risk that I see, and Sudhir touched on it, we have some of the new workforce and we still have the old workforce. So we really have two workforces. You've got the digital as well as the legacy. And you can't change everything overnight. It's going to take time as you go through this transformation. And the fact is our customers are also on a different, at a different point in their journey. So there'll still be a lot of legacy work that you need to keep the operations running. I mean, to use an analogy, if you think about it, what we're trying to do here is sort of like changing the tires while the car is still moving, right? And so you've got this situation where you're going to have a digital workforce, you're going to have a legacy workforce, and that's going to cause a lot of churn in the employees. People want to jump from this to the other, but you still need to maintain them. So I think that's another risk that we need to think through and plan around and work out some mitigation strategies.
Thank you.
I think just on that, I think,
yeah, please go.
maybe for the first time, I think there'll be 4 generations working in the workforce together, and I think I agree completely. That's just going to lead to, I think, interesting challenges, which
Absolutely.
I think the HR folks are going to be busy, I think. So.
And I would completely agree with George on 99%. The only time I took umbrage was you said millennial workforce, digital, and then the old workforce, and you looked at me. Age is a matter of perspective. Questions, please. Yeah. We'll come to you the next one. If you could. We will get a microphone, and if you can't hear, lift your hand. We will say the question again, and then.
Hi, good afternoon. Great points by the panel. Vishal Krishna here, editor of Your Story. Everyone's talking about the gig economy. Do you see more and more people freelancing in the future? And like you said, the media says it's a doomsday when AI and ML comes along. But the young workforce, like Mr. George says, likes to work outside of structured ecosystems. So do you see the AI platforms being built by the gig economy or the sharing economy?
Let me take a stab at what, there are multiple angles to it. I mean, if I have to predict how the services industry itself will look a couple of years from now, we talked about multiple angles to it. I think there's a lot of work being done on future of work itself. What is the future definition of an employee? That itself will go through a dramatic change. And many technologies will enable us to do things very differently than what we have done in the past. So which means organization structures, the silos that we have, many of them can get broken and probably will get broken. If you don't break it, somebody else will come and break it. So I think there are infinite possibilities, but I think we should not lose track of one important fact. At the end of the day, in the services industry, the most important guy is the customer. The customer has come to you with a problem, with a challenge, which is not a technology challenge, it's a business challenge. Now, our ability to be able to understand that and solve it in the most efficient manner, that single premise is not going to go through a change. I may use machine language, I may use artificial intelligence, I may use contractors, I may have employees, it really doesn't matter. The question is, how do we put it all together and make it most efficient as seen in the eyes of the customer? That will be the overriding factor.
Yeah, and I think on a lighter note, George, all of them spoke of this perspective, Sarvesh. We have to develop a perspective which is broader. Our project managers would always say, I finished the project on time and within the budget. This is like a surgeon coming out of the operation theater and saying, the surgery was successful, the patient is dead. It has no meaning, right? That's exactly it. So, like Partha said here, it's not about fulfilling a project, Sarvesh pointed out. You have to deliver what the customer expects, implicit expectation or explicit. It could be both. You had a question.
Yeah, can I?
Somebody has a mic here.
Hi, my name is Prateek. I'm from Hexaware Technologies. I would like to talk about the 2 waves that I'm experiencing as of now. One is reduction in the cost of running business, IT business. Cloud is there, automation is there. So there we see a lot of cost reductions. And on the other wave is the digitization wave, where new technologies are being introduced. We are getting new use cases for IoT, AI. So one is, and also, streamlining IT with business. So one wave is increasing the IT importance and the expenditure, and other side we are seeing reduction in the costs for running IT business. So what would be the residual change in your view, and what would the spread between the products and the services?
I can just start that and then pass it on to others. I think it's a wonderful question. In some sense, what you're alluding to, it's all about coexistence and balance. And I'll give an analogy and others can add to it. China has the highest saving rate of 35%. India has 30 or 28, and China is considered the saving on GDP is highest there. Yet you look at what happened on 11.11 sale of Alibaba. In the first 2 hours of sale, 12 billion worth of revenues happened. And I was suddenly saying, these are the people who save, and how come they're spending so much? Is there a contradiction between the two? No, not really. You can explain this. I'm sure an economist can explain what is happening. How if your earning powers are high, you not only can spend, but can also save. The same dichotomy, I'll give you another example. If I'm General Motors as a company, I could say, oh, Tesla is coming. I must switch over completely to an electric car. But like Partha pointed out and others, you currently have customers who don't want electric car. They want you to supply for their internal combustion engine. So the whole concept, the challenge we have is not just change and transformation quickly. How do we hold the old and also change with the new? Having given that, more thoughts from all of you. Yeah.
I think, so efficiency if it's available, you should take it. I mean, that's a no-brainer, right? I mean, why wouldn't you do that? I think a lot of organizations are talking about two-speed IT, which I think our point of view is that really doesn't make sense, because if you go back to the fact that business and technology is going to be so closely intertwined, just having two separate organizations internally managing it, it could be a short-term fix. It's not going to work, I think, longer term. I think the key challenge is as technology becomes more and more central, how quickly, and I wouldn't use the word streamline, I think business and tech really need to be integrated. I think most of the CEOs we've been talking to actually know technology, I think much more than they knew maybe 3 years back. So everyone is really bothered about. And what they're trying to figure out is, how do I use technology to fundamentally create a different business model? This is not about efficiency, right? 30 years back, when the first banking programs were written, it was someone who was actually just churning out, interest calculations much faster, which made absolute sense to do. I don't think that is the challenge right now. Now the challenge is using technology. Can I have a new business idea, product, or model out there, which is going to take competition away, or find me new ways of making money? And I think that is the challenge. I don't think the businesses know that. I think businesses worldwide are worried on it. They are looking at the technology folks saying, hey, you guys get technology, can you tell me what needs to be done for my business? And I think to the point, I think Partha, you mentioned that, getting specific on an industry or domain where you have that expertise, I think that is the ask right now. And can you borrow ideas from a different industry or domain and apply it here? Sure.
Check. Can I ask a question?
Yes, please.
Right. My name is Vinay Shinde. I'm a social entrepreneur, green initiative entrepreneur. I worked IT almost 18 plus years. My question is very generic question, because I'm keep hearing a lot of innovation in terms of the business model, the technology innovations, and then operational challenges, and all those things are fine. It's a just question. Anyway, every IT industry need to be innovative for a survival. The question is around, do you see, because of the digitization, from a social sector side, is there any opportunity to the IT world, keeping the government aside, and keeping the government aside, is there any opportunity with the digital world that, new innovative way of addressing the social needs of India especially the nation building activities? So is there anything, there is an opportunity towards these directions from a IT service side?
Excuse me. Yeah, I think one of the big reasons people do not participate in social causes is because there is no or very little transparency. So one of the things that the digitization and new technologies can do is create a lot of transparency, and that will I think that will cause more people to participate in the social causes. The other thing that it can do is that you don't have to, right now if I have to do something, it's very difficult for me to build a whole team that can do this. But using social media and other things, you can actually find opportunities to participate in social causes much easier.
It is not the question of the social cause. One thing is the corporate can engage for a CSR activities and wash their hands. My question is with relevance to the money being spent on a CSR. If I recall the data of 2016, close to 11,000 crore being spent in India on a CSR for top 300 companies, right? So do you see there is an opportunity for a nation building activities that itself as a vertical focusing towards leveraging the digital?
I would just say, I don't know what you mean by a vertical for nation building. The private-public partnership to establish India stack, technology stack, which resulted in payment system, direct payment, the Aadhaar, is a very good example. Ultimately, each of you don't, in this case of a social cause, the end customer, if you want to use that, is the common man. Every industry need not reach him directly. As long as you feed into an initiative which provides alignment and cohesion, that itself would be contributing substantially. And I thought, and you could comment, what the private-public joint venture did in terms of the common stack itself is a substantial innovation which nobody else has done.
Yeah, I mean, I can give a few examples of, I think, work which is happening, some stuff we have done. So if you look at education, health, as well as the financial services space, I think huge impact which technology can have right now. Technology via open source, technology via building communities to get other people to participate on that. So if you look at an organization like Rangde, I think on the back of India Stack, what they have been able to build is, giving loans at a much lower rate, that's what their plan is, compared to other peer-to-peer lenders out there in the market. That actually works just because of technology. It's because of India Stack. It's because the whole payment banks are working. They can actually connect, someone who wants a loan, they can get the loan, they can trace the credit history. So I think a lot of that stuff can happen. Health is just, the amount of stuff you can do on health is mind-boggling, especially as you collect more information. If you combine health and analytics, you should be able to predict outbreaks of diseases. So I think absolutely, and I do think organizations are, working on that already.
Thank you, sir.
Let me just add one point. I think we have to be realistic about it. The social problems are complex problems. Technology can only be one part of it. So otherwise we'll lose track of the sense of the magnitude of the problem. But at the same time, I personally think we have not used enough of technology to solve some of the social problems. And I'll give a very small example that some group of people in Mindtree have been trying. Is this garbage problem. If you look at the garbage problem in great detail, it's actually a supply chain problem. Somebody generates garbage, somebody is willing to consume garbage, provided there is a predictability to it. Right? So we started a program called I Got Garbage, which is basically a technology platform where garbage creators and the garbage consumers can come together. Now, can we alone solve the problem by putting out a technology? Answer is no. You have to get local municipalities involved, you have to get multiple NGOs involved. Now, the same concept can be extended to a next level. So we are trying to do saying, I got crops, or I got skills. So I think we have to be realistic about solving social problems where technology is only one part of the problem. But have we embraced technology enough? The answer is no. Whether it's India Stack or whether it's something else, there are great opportunities.
Can I?
My name is Krishna Vaidya from Resolve Systems. I have two questions. The first one is what is the role of automation and AI in reaching these new heights? And the second one is in the similar line, what is the impact of automation and AI? And I think George already alluded to some of the points, but I think I would like to hear some of the other panelists' view. Thank you.
Yeah. Who wants?
I think data and AI and ML are the new competitive advantages. Right? Earlier, it used to be that a company would be competitively positioned well because they were making better products. But those products keep changing. But if you have the data, then you can actually predict what your clients want much better than if you don't have the data. And that is one of the reasons that the companies like Amazon and Google and Facebook would be so hard to beat, because they have so much data that they can use for all kinds of things. So I think data, AI, ML is going to be used more and more, and it is going to be used across the board. Like if you have an application, it will behave differently using AI and ML, and will improve over time because it will get data on how it's being used.
So Sarvesh, George, I'll just take 1 minute to give an example. Bob Lutz, who was the vice chairman of General Motors, paints this picture on what happens to the automotive industry because of AI. AI will lead to autonomous cars. The moment cars are autonomous, there will be no drivers. I'm talking of the 20-year scenario or 15 years. All of a sudden, people will stop buying cars progressively, and it will be institutional buying. The Lyft, the Ubers, and the Olas are the one who will buy bulk from the manufacturers. By doing that, buyer behavior will change. People will no longer want 8-cylinder, 6-cylinder, 4-cylinder. They want one standard car which is efficient at the lowest possible price. All of a sudden, highways will start looking like a railway track, because all you want the car to do is to join the highway. Everything will go at the same speed, at the same acceleration. Everything will get off the highway and take you in an optimized fashion to your destination. So imagine the impact of AI in the automotive industry. The buyer changes completely from being the individual to the institution. The competitive advantages and the value proposition, which used to be bells and whistles and power, will be transformed into reliability and as well as standardization and cost. There cannot be a better example than this to say the entire distribution system across the world for cars will completely go away. And that is a very good example of what AI can bring about in the automotive industry. And like this, you can talk of various other industries. George, I'm sorry.
Check. Can you hear me? Hello? Yeah. Okay, so just to answer your question, data is really the fuel behind digitization. When we surveyed our customers, almost 80% of them are investing heavily in analytics and new analytic tools, because that's really, I think, one of my panelists mentioned that it's all about understanding the customer, and that's what digitization is all about, right? It's getting close to your customer, understanding them, being able to customize your product to meet their need, deliver it in a way that he wants. I think all of that ties in with some of the things we are talking about. But that's definitely the trend, and that's where industry is going. AI, analytics, automation, all play into that.
So I think we are...
Can I just add one point?
Yeah,
on this?
of course,
I think, slightly tangential. So I think all this stuff will happen. I think new ideas will come out. I think the technology is there. I think there's a very interesting point on the ethics of the whole thing, of what actually happens. So if you see how machine learning or AI is going to work, it's on the current data set. And data is being collected. It's being programmed by, unfortunately, a lot of people in the US right now. I think that's where most of the stuff is coming out. Now decisions, and this is a debate we keep happening, if there's an autonomous car on the road and it has an option of, and someone's crossing the road, and now programmatically, and someone has to lose a life, is it the passenger or is it the person who's crossing the road, right? Who is deciding this? Who is coding this kind of stuff? And I think that's going to be a big challenge, I think, rapidly in the next few years, right? I think there are governments around the world who are really, if you look at facial recognition, I think every photo we are uploading on Facebook or Instagram is getting tagged and is being used by someone. And I think the challenge in the next few years is going to be the impact of that. I think the fruits of the good things which will happen, I think we'll all get it. Maybe.
Yeah, I think laws on liability, laws on privacy, right to be forgotten as we...
companies like insurance companies, I think that, what are they insuring now? Are they insuring cars? Are they insuring people? So I think we're going to see a lot of drastic change in that. But I think that's something which we need a wider debate on.
Thank you, Sudhir. Since we are out of time, we'll take your question off the table just after this. Concluding thoughts, gentlemen, from each one of you. We can keep it to 45 seconds to a minute. Starting with Partha.
So I think while it's good to be paranoid as an industry so that we don't face a Kodak moment, I personally believe there's no need to paint a doomsday scenario. That's point number one. I think our industry has shown remarkable ability to be able to adapt to change. Like I said before, I think we have some of the finest people working, and I think everybody is working doubly hard today to see how can we not only survive but also thrive in spite of all the change. That's the second point. The third is actually some of the metrics that we have been using in the past to judge how good the industry is. For example, number of people working in the industry have to go through a dramatic change. It should be more about what value we have been able to give to customers. I think Sudhir touched upon a very interesting and a very extremely important topic is the diversity of workforce. And I'm not talking of just about gender and culture, and I'm not talking of having ponytail people working, but I'm talking about education background from a diversity. We have too many left-brain people, and I think left-brain people have always been running this industry. And I think the most complex problems of the future can't be solved only by the left-brain guys. So I think diversity has to be a big focus area. While the past success is no guarantee for the future, I still believe that we have the ability to be able to take control of our own destinies. Having said all this, in spite of all the things that we talked about, I personally believe the future is very exciting. Very complex problems of security and privacy as well as technologies, and it will continue to be the best industry to work for some of the young talent who are coming into the industry.
Thank you, Pat. Thank you. Sarvesh.
Okay. I think our clients are no longer giving us work. They are giving us responsibility. And we are becoming their extensions of their innovation labs or becoming the innovation lab for them. So all of this is requiring us to behave differently, and it's creating a lot of opportunities. And what I see is, especially for all you people who are early in your careers, a lot of new entrepreneurial opportunity where you could go and create new companies doing new things and give us a run for our money. So thank you.
Yeah, I would just quote, I think the paranoid survives. So I think we should be paranoid because I think change is happening. And I think as services industry, if we're not really going back and questioning each and everything we're doing, I think we're in trouble, right? From the way we are hiring, the processes we follow, I think we touched upon some of those things. Who we're talking at the client side, what are their expectations, how do we service that? I think that's the need for the hour. But yes, the IT industry has been through a lot for the last 20 years, and I think as Indians, we love to criticize ourselves quite a lot. So I think maybe we should continue to do that. But I think the opportunity is huge, and the new buzzwords, I think that's going to change. It's no longer a game of efficiency, right? It's going to be a lot about innovation, sort of moving forward. Like when we were growing up, failure was not considered good, even while we were working, and now it's fail fast and embrace failure. I think you mentioned that earlier, fail as soon as possible so you have more times to fix it. So I think huge changes will happen. I agree completely, the best time to be in software again, I think.
George, you will have the last word.
I have the last word. Thank you, Jayesh. So I think everybody has made a lot of good observations here. Yes, we are facing a lot of change. There's sort of a perfect storm. I think we've touched on mostly the technological changes, but there's other macroeconomic factors, global factors such as increased protectionism, the rupee getting stronger, so we can cover our increasing costs because of that. So you put all this together, and certainly the challenges look like a big mountain. But I think when you look at our culture, our people, we are resilient, we are adaptable. I think you just need to look at how we drive on the roads to figure that out, right? There's a gap there. We'll go there and we'll eventually make it. So I'm very optimistic about it. When I look at our own company, some of the big deals that we've won in the last year, all around digitization, the turning point in that sales cycle has always been when the customer came to India and they saw our people, and we've talked about our people many times, but it's really true. I mean, we've got the commitment, the creativity, the innovation, the talent that really opens the eyes of customers even out in the West. So you put all that together, and then I'll just point out one thing. I mean, you got 4 people from 4 different companies here. We are all thinking about this. This is probably what keeps us up at night, keeps us from sleeping well at night. And there is a lot of focus on trying to understand the challenges and understanding the risks and putting in changes, to deal with this. So I think, Jayesh, just to close out, I'm sure 15 years from now, there'll be another panel here talking about the next doomsday scenario. Good thing is at least you and me won't be on there.
Thank you, George, Sudhir, Sarvesh, and Partha. In keeping with the digital age, I'll summarize with one sentence. No time for complacency, but full of promise and hope. Thank you very much.
Yeah, I would request the panelists to kindly stay back. First of all, Mr. Jayesh will give a mementos to all the panelists. I would request Mr. Partha to accept a memento. Thank you very much. I would request Mr. Sarvesh also to accept the memento. Sudhir Tiwari. And also to Mr. George J. Matakul. I would request Mr. Ashok Pamidi, the regional head and senior director of NASCOM, to come over and give a memento to the moderator. Ladies and gentlemen, I think you all forgot to clap earlier. I think in unison you can do that now. So we'll have a quick tea break, and the next session will start at 4 o'clock. So please have your tea or coffee of your choice and come back by 4 o'clock.